Representative Trey Lamar. He serves as the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, represents District 8 up in North Mississippi. Good to see you there, Representative Lamar.
Hello, Gerard. I appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir. So you and I last spoke last week, had a great conversation. Appreciate all the insight. When we were focusing on the bill that would expand the Capital Complex Improvement District, also known as the CCID. And one question we didn't get to do on the air that you were kind enough to send me a text response to is how, and you're the author, the sponsor of this bill, how did you select this particular area of the city of Jackson for expansion of the CCID?
Well, Gerard, I'll say first and foremost, as I said on the floor, when we spoke earlier and to several media outlets who've asked that question, that part of the bill is up for debate. I'm not married to what we proposed, but and the Senate may very well change that. But what we were thinking was really twofold, that the law enforcement officers of the Capitol Police need to have well-defined geographic boundaries for jurisdictional purposes. You can't have a district where they have jurisdiction that just zigzags. On one block they may have jurisdiction, the next block they don't. So we began looking at that, and we meeting with the commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. He said he would much rather, and I agree with him on this, that he would much rather that district look like a triangle as opposed to a star or something like that. So that's what we looked at, and then that's where we came up with what really looks like a rectangle in what we drew, which is Highway 80 to the south, State Street to the west, County Line Road to the north, and the Pearl River to the east. So that's number one. And then number two, there's been a request from a lot of the business groups. And if you look at Jackson, a big part of Jackson's economic engine is up and down I-55. I-55 is really the front door, the main corridor into the heart of downtown Jackson. And so, there's a lot of people who just feel like it makes sense to have the Capitol Complex District travel that I-55 corridor. But again, that's up for debate, and we'll see what the process unfolds as it goes through.
Sure. And so the idea, I believe, Representative Lamar, would be that the City of Jackson Police Department would be able to reallocate its police resources to the remaining area of the City of Jackson that would not be part of the Capital Complex Improvement District, that the CCID would be patrolled by the Capitol Police. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. I mean, I think to point out, nobody's taking jurisdiction away, or the bill does not take jurisdiction away from the Jackson Police Department. But what it would do would be allow them to focus their efforts, which everyone knows are limited at this time. They are well short of trained law enforcement officers on their staff, and they've admitted that themselves. And so they would be able to focus their more limited resources in other areas of Jackson and work in tandem with the Capitol Police so that really the whole city of Jackson it has better law enforcement services and ultimately improve safety all over the city.
I shared with you when you were on the program, which I believe was the day after the rather protracted debate there in the House, and watch Representative Johnson and the other members of the House offer a number of amendments. I believe all but one perhaps were not successful. I believe one was adopted, as I recall, looking at the history. Is that right? That's right. Yeah.
That's
okay.
Correct.
So it seems like most of the opposition does not involve the Capitol Police having jurisdiction over that area, but more related to the judicial district and the fact that the bill would empower the Attorney General to appoint the 3 judges for the district, and then is that Supreme Court? The Supreme Court,
so,
right, Trey? Yeah. And then the Attorney General, the prosecutors. Yeah. Please. That's so that's what I heard. That's where most of the objection was.
Yeah, so that's right. I mean, the objection's really in two areas, and one we already talked about is the boundaries. I would add that on the boundaries of the CCID, again, those are up for debate. We can have that conversation, but the proposed the proposed boundaries that the House passed for the CCID, we looked at that, and those were approximately 55% African American. So it was a majority minority district. That gets lost in the media. The media is not reporting on that. But that's factual. The second part, Gerard, as far as opposition goes, is the judicial part of it. And I would tell you that when the CCID was founded back in 2017, or the very first authorizing legislation, there were those in the Jackson delegation at that time that were pushing for the CCID to have its own court system. In fact, there were even representatives from Jackson serving in this body at the
Hmm.
time that wanted to be the appointed judge over the CCID. And so this is not some just left wing
Hmm.
crazy out of the blue idea that just came out of nowhere this year. This was discussed at the very beginning stages of the CCID, and at the time we felt like it was best to take one bite of the apple at a time. Let's get it let's get it founded.
Yeah.
Let's see how it works. And then since then, we've added the Capitol Police to the Department of Public Safety. We did that last year, and this is just another building block to continue to look at it. And there's a lot of requests. I met with a business owner in Jackson just this morning who thanked the legislature and myself for what we're trying to do, and said, please keep it up. The future of Jackson really depends on getting this crime situation under control, and they very much want to be included inside the new boundaries of the CCID. They're a business that's located along that I-55 corridor that we discussed. So, going back to the judges, though, some of the opposition, Gerard, has been that it appoints judges. Well, there's a limited population in the CCID, and depending on where that boundary ultimately falls, you're going to have a limited population to pull from. And so, and on top of that, the CCID is not a city, it's not a county. There's questions about how do you even have an election in that area, who holds the election, if you were going to elect the judges. And so
Right.
after much conversation and talk, we just felt like to get good judges, to get judges in there that would do the job, it would be best for the citizens of Jackson, the CCID, to have them appointed. Now, those judges may very well be from the city of Jackson, or they may be from Hinds County. That's certainly a very real possibility. I would suggest that perhaps they need to be, but I don't think they should be limited to Hinds County. And on top of that, there is no legal requirement in our Constitution or our statutory code that requires that inferior court judges be elected. There are multiple occasions throughout the state of Mississippi where judges are appointed as opposed to elected, not to mention our entire federal judiciary.
Right. Yeah, and I know there was a lot of pushback on that, feeling like that there was some racial motivation, which is what the narrative the media has been running with, honestly, is that this whole thing is racially motivated. And I believe that your conversation with a business owner about this situation is fairly consistent and pervasive with the entire population. Is we don't really care. We just want the place to be safe, and we want it to be prosperous. And that's our primary concern. And we want bad guys to be locked up when they need to be, or that the full extent of the law is imposed on them so they can get off the streets.
That's right. And let's talk about another angle to this as well. I sit as chair of Ways and Means, which is really a state position. We're not elected statewide, but we look at policy that affects the state as a whole, and that's part of our job in our committee. And so, let's certainly don't forget the impact that a thriving metropolitan area in the city in Mississippi, the impact that could have on the state as a whole. Look at just some of our states around us. Some would say you can't compare us to Tennessee or Nashville, and I get it. But Nashville is not the only metropolis that Tennessee has.
Right.
If you don't want to compare us to Tennessee, compare us to Alabama. Have you been to Birmingham lately? You've seen some things they're doing in downtown Birmingham. Have you been to the Huntsville area? If you don't think Alabama's a good comparison, drive to Arkansas. Go look at Little Rock. Have you been to Little Rock lately? Look at what's going on in Little Rock. They've got some
Yeah,
great things going on, some really
all
cool things
valid.
in their downtown. A lot of redevelopment, a lot of millions and millions of dollars being reinvested into those cities, and we don't have that in
We,
Jackson.
I agree.
If we did have that,
Trey,
then
I'm sorry, we got a break right here. Can you hang with us? I want to ask you
I'll be
about
glad to.
taxes. All right, we got Representative Trey Lamar on Middays. Coming right back. Stay with us. Middays, we are in hour 3 of the program. Our guest is Representative Trey Lamar, chairs the House Ways and Means Committee. We were just chatting about this bill that Representative Lamar authored that would expand the Capitol Complex Improvement District. So I think all that makes sense, honestly, Trey. And again, witnessing the debate in the House was a little off-putting because I just feel like we got to move away from this narrative, this default narrative that every action is driven by racism. And I think the average person out in the city of Jackson don't care. They don't care, honestly, who's in charge and who's doing what, as long as it's the right thing and as long as their quality of life is improved.
Well, I'll flatly deny that this bill has anything to do with racism or had any racial intent whatsoever. That's just absolute false. And I do believe you're right, and I've said it many times over the last few weeks. The people of Jackson, by and large, and not to mention just Jackson, but the people of the state of Mississippi who want to be able to travel and visit their capital city don't care about any of those issues. They literally want to feel safe when they come here. They want to feel safe in their homes, and when they shop and they go to the store and they're out and about in Jackson. For several years now, they a lot of times have not been able to do that. We've got to change that perception if Jackson's going to grow and prosper. And so, putting more resources into law enforcement and assisting the city of Jackson in that area, and then also assisting the Hinds County judiciary that is severely backed up, is worth having a debate. And that's what we're doing over this bill, and we'll see where it lands in the process.
A question:
and I'll add this, Gerard. I just don't think doing nothing is not an option. It's just not.
Agree. The judicial appointments, again, would be appointed by the Supreme Court. 4-year term, is that correct?
That's the current language in the bill that passed the House. And again, the Supreme Court appoints judges to hear cases all over the state. There's three special appointed judges sitting in Hinds County right now that were appointed by the Mississippi Supreme Court. It's nothing unusual. It happens literally every day across the state.
Okay. All right. Well, so right now it's been transmitted to the Senate. I just checked on the status. It's in one of the judicial committees at this point, right?
That's right. It is in Judiciary A in the Senate, and that's chaired by Senator Bryce. And I met with him yesterday, and look forward to. He's very open to the bill, and I think he's going to give it a fair look. And so I look forward to continuing to work with the Senate to see how we can improve it and make it better.
Okay. Is your feeling that the Senate will, in fact, pass the bill?
My understanding, based on our meetings, I expect them to make some changes. Let me say that, and I believe there are some changes that could be made to help the bill be a better piece of legislation. That's why we have a process. A bill starts out, and it gets changed throughout the process, and the goal is to have a better piece of legislation if and when that bill is enacted into law. And so, but yes, to answer your question, I do think the Senate will make every effort to pass that bill and continue that discussion.
Okay. You serving, of course, as chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. By the way, our mutual friend Jeff Smith said to tell you, hey, I wanted to pass that on.
Hello, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. So, Trey, taxes. So yesterday I watched you present the bill that would has been needed for a long time, which would eliminate this reconciliation required between federal and state taxes as it pertains to immediate expensing of capital equipment, capital investment. And so this bill would eliminate that reconciliation such that the state tax code would be consistent with federal treatment of those transactions. That passed. There were some amendments offered. First of all, thank you, because as a business person that had to deal with that, that's a royal pain, honestly, that was unnecessary. And that's one of those things where we should be consistent. And as much as we can get away from these reconciling items, as you well know, the easier is it to prepare tax returns and the less money you spend on tax preparation fees, et cetera. And you just have fewer problems in the disposition of an asset when you have that situation as well. So this was a good thing. Some amendments were offered. I couldn't quite tell what they were looking to do to amend the bill, all of which were defeated, I believe. Can you explain some of those?
So the one particular amendment that was offered was dealing with hospitals and healthcare, but it taxed literally everything you could imagine. The list was so long, I lost count of what all they were going to tax in that amendment. But it was, boats and four-wheelers and guns and ammunition, bullets, and the list went on and on and on. Obviously, that this bill was not the place for that. So we easily, I think even many Democrats voted against that amendment.
That's the sort of shenanigans you see in Washington that aggravates everybody, though. Hey, we got something here that's going to go through. Let's just dump everything we can. And next thing you know, you got a 3,000-page bill. And on the other side, people say, what'd you do that for? And nobody even knew. That's sort of what our process is at the state level is obviously a lot more open and transparent than that because it can be. But that's kind of what that looked like to me.
Well, I don't doubt it. I saw you up in the audience yesterday, and I was wondering what you were thinking when some of that was going on because the House got a little off track yesterday. We were reading bills there for a minute, and debate got cut off, and so the process is messy. But I will say this: the legislative process is intended to be messy.
That's right.
It was made that way on purpose. Because before we had that process, you had a king.
That's right.
Across the pond who could just decide, hey, off with his head. And that's
Agree.
Thankfully, that's not the government we live under today.
Agree. So, and I want to be clear, I'm fine with the process, just as you said. I certainly understand that. And I think we got the right outcome here. That's the main thing. So we had the process, but we got what I believe was the right outcome, which is it would have been inappropriate at a minimum to include some of those amendments in this bill that has absolutely nothing to do with this bill. Yeah. And we start getting into trouble if that becomes a regular practice. I think you'd probably agree with that. That's where the messiness needs some checks and balances, and we saw that yesterday. So appreciate that. I
certainly agree with that. Yep. And I'll say that bill has got the potential to really help businesses and help the economy, encourage further investment into their businesses. So excited about that piece of legislation.
Absolutely. And I've pointed this out many times as well, Representative Lamar. This doesn't eliminate or avoid income taxes. It just simply defers them. That's really what it does. Yeah. You're just taking all that expense in this year rather than recognizing it over the useful life of an asset. You're not getting rid of any income tax liability. You're just changing the years in which it occurs is what it boils down to. All right. Let's talk about total elimination of income taxes. Where are we on that?
Well, we did not have a bill this year, Gerard. At least one did not come out yesterday. I'll just tell you that's more of a timing issue. First and foremost, I have to say the Mississippi House of Representatives has, on at least 3 occasions, maybe more, over the last several years, voted to eliminate the income tax in Mississippi. And I don't question anybody's willingness to continue to do that. But there was a few members who had questions about the timing. this is an election year, and so we've got a change in leadership going on in the House after this year. There's just a heightened sensitivity, I think, in the House right now. So you had a few members who would prefer to wait, and that's their prerogative. There are others that would like to go forward. I'd say the vast majority of the Republican caucus is on board with eliminating the income tax in Mississippi and continuing those efforts. And I think you've got, obviously, the Speaker wants to do that. He said that multiple times. And I believe Governor Tate Reeves wants to do that. I've had meetings with him recently, but he's not been shy about that at all either. And so, those two gentlemen will continue to discuss it, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I remain committed to it. I firmly believe that income tax elimination, what I like to call the tax on work, and ending that in Mississippi is the best thing we can do for the future of our state.
Appreciate you coming on, Representative Trey Lamar. Thanks a lot. We'll see you down there, Trey. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Gerard. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You got it. Coming right back on Middays.